Great. So the basic idea is just to show you the debugger a little bit. Some of you might have seen it, some of you may not, but I think it's good practice to see how someone can use it in practice at the very least. And to do that, I will very different, Eduardo. Yeah, very, very different. And to do this, I will work a little bit in an old project that some of you might have seen like a month ago or so when we implemented tic-tac-toe during one of the student sessions. And I will give you a link to that in the Zoom chat, so you can, if you want to clone it and just if you want to see the code, basically. It's nothing fancy, and I will go through it a little bit as well. But like the functionality isn't what we're focusing on today. Like if the logic is hard or whatever, the focus in how we would approach solving problems in a code base, and that like the functionality doesn't really have a part in that. You should be able to use the debugger for any code ever. Yeah, that's the basic idea, at least. So I see that one more person has dropped in. This is 27. So I think no one else will step in.
I pinged every channel. They should come. If they not, simply start it.
Then the recording is there, and the core saved the day. So let's see. Is it a good idea to share the desktop? This isn't my computer. I'm borrowing Eduardo's, so I don't know. Maybe he has some secret files, so I will just use the specific one for IntelliJ for now, at least. So don't mind this. This is just the dev news solution that Kobena has provided. We will look at a little bit about or in that as well later, but first we look at this. Now I'm getting, maybe, wait, I might have to do this actually. Yeah. You should be able to see the tic-tac-toe files now, right? Someone just to give me a nod or whatever.
Maybe if there's a possibility of increasing the size of the font.
It should be somewhere. Let's see. Where is like there? Here we have something. Oh no, this is with the custom font. Editor, do we have some font stuff in here maybe?
Someone said maybe comment plus.
We can try that. If I find plus on this keyboard. Nope, doesn't work.
Well, it's all right. If it's all right.
And minus.
How we manage?
I mean, yeah, we can keep this for now. If there is some major problems later, let me know. But I think, as I said, right, it isn't that hard functionality. This is just some variables here. So yeah, first we can describe the function of the program.
You
right?
could give a last shot by pressing the command plus equal sign on Mac. That is a comment on the chat as well.
Okay, why can't I see the chat anymore? Oh, there. Command equal. Zoom on Mac. Okay, but it's the same button. Eduardo has this weird like American keyboard or something. I mean, the plus and the equals is on the same spot, but I mean, it should be in here. Yeah, whoever watches the recording, by the way, you can probably just skip like 2 minutes now. But isn't it just here? What? Didn't I? Okay, I had it right in
We
front of me
can't see
before.
the settings, but if you go into File Settings Editor General, then there's a tick box for mouse control, change font size with control plus mouse wheel.
Yes, I found it,
Okay, great.
I think. And I will just share the desktop. If Eduardo has any secret files, then he shouldn't have given me permissions. Is the text is a bit bigger? Can you all see it better now?
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, I have some Zoom stuff in the way here. Okay, but just a quick rundown of the program, right? So it's basic tic-tac-toe, which is, for those of you who don't know, we have a board, which is 3 by 3. We have X's and O's, and we want to get 3 in a row here, basically. So if I play, let's say, I set the coordinates to 0, 0, then I place an X at the top left coordinate, and then O's turn, and let's say O, 1, and then we put it here, right? And then the goal is to get 3 in a row. So it isn't that hard. It's pretty basic. And yeah, basically we have the tic-tac-toe class, which holds some scanners to handle the user interface and stuff like that, and which character. So let's say you would like to use something else than X's and O's, right? Then you can change them here and stuff like that. But otherwise, we have a huge function, which basically is the entire game loop. And it's not that beautiful. It could probably be refactored a bunch, but I made this project pretty quick, so you don't get to complain too much. And then we have the board, which basically just is a grid, a character grid that holds the X's, the O's, and the empty spaces. So yeah. And then the game loop is quite simple. X will begin and stuff like that. We will play the game as long as the board isn't full and no one has won yet. We will ask for the X and Y coordinates of the player who's playing, as we did before, right? So 0 and 1, or whatever coordinate you pick. Then we will set a mark, and this function is a bit, it looks worse than it is. It just returns true or false if you manage to set the mark or not. So it's like a failsafe. If I try to put something on like, let's say 5 on row 5, right? But we only have 3 rows, then this will catch that and tell me to try again, basically. Yeah, and then we have like a check to see if someone has won and stuff like that. But yeah, so this is the basic idea of the program. We have a game loop, and then we have some logic in the board as well that checks like if we can set a mark, check if the board is full, and then we have a winning condition that checks a couple of different things, right? So like if we have 3 in a row here, 3 in a row here, 3 in a row here, or by columns. So let's see. Just gonna check one thing. Yeah, so that's the basic rundown of the program, but that's not really the important thing now. The important thing that we wanted to check is the debugger. So some of you might have seen this little green button up top. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but hopefully you can. And this is basically how you run your program in debug mode. So normally you would press the normal run button, but the difference here, if you use the debug function, is that basically IntelliJ like inserts, well, let's call it a bug for all intents and purposes, right, inside of a program that can start and stop the program at different lines as we see fit, which makes it easier for us to see what errors occur and stuff like that. And by the way, if I see that Carolee wrote something in chat, right? But if someone writes something and I just ignore it, it's because I haven't seen it. So give me a heads up, right? Yeah, so let's just try it out. So as you see here, I have inserted what we call a breakpoint. And that basically means that if we run this program here, when we reach this line, the program will stop. So let's see how that looks. Right? So now we run the program and we are getting here. And as we can see, IntelliJ has like marked it as with a blue line, because all that's really going on here is that this is the program state that we are in currently. It's not too much going on here. But we have gotten some windows here that we wouldn't usually, right? Usually we would just have some normal console. You can ignore this for now. This is just some debug output. But this is like normal console where you would supply the coordinates for the board bit later. But we have this new debug window that has some new functions, right? So let's look here first. This is what we would call a call stack, which basically is a list of function calls or nested function calls that our function will perform, right? So let's say that when we will continue later, right, we will start running this function and the function here, right? Then we will add functions on top of this call stack here, which basically just tells us like where in the program logic we are, so to speak. And then we have here the variables. It's not looking too nice now because we don't have anything there. But let's say that we are stopping at this line instead. Here we can see that we actually can see our variables, like our local variables inside of the function currently, right? So we can see that the variable height is equal to 3 and the variable width is equal to 3 as well. And we can see that up here as well. And we get some nice windows from IntelliJ. Yeah. So this is all good and well, right? We can see the state of the program right now. We can see where in the program we are. But we also need to step through it now, right? So there is 2 buttons here that I would these are the 2 ones that you mostly will need to focus on, at least at the start. Learn what these 2 do. These 2 are like valuable as well, but these are the 2 main ones. So we have step over and step into. And what these are doing is basically step over. If we go to this function here, this actually does nothing except print hello. But if I were to press step over, then we would take this function and just call it and jump to this line instead, like nothing happened. So let's see how that looks. Now we just go to the next step. And if we look in the console, we can see that, yeah, the function has been called, right? But if I were to restart this now, let's shut the breakpoint here instead. And I will jump step by step back here. Step into will instead try to like go into this function. So if I press this here, right? Now we go to the lines inside of this function. So that is the basic difference between them, right? Step over tries to step over functions, while step into steps into the function. And that's basically it for that, right? Yes. Yeah, and if we continue to use the step over, step into, right, we will sooner or later return to wherever the step over function would have come, right? So that is the basic idea. The debugger allows you to go step by step, line by line in your code, and then you can see what's going on, right? So let's say that we jump into the play tic-tac-toe function, for example. maybe that makes a little bit more sense. So if we continue on, oh yeah, by the way, there is like, these are the buttons that's here. There are like one more that I would say is fine or like good to know, which is, you can see the debug action and stuff like right now, right? There is a resume program as well. This will continue running the program until you reach another breakpoint, basically, which is nice if we want to jump around a bit more to another section of the program, right? Yeah, but let's continue to jump here. Here we can see that we have a function, right, that checks if the board is full. So let's try to step into that. And then we can see that, yeah, we're jumping here until we get inside of a function that not even is in the same file. And like right now, the only thing that this function does is to check each, oh yeah, I don't have the board anymore, right? But it checks the 3x3 matrix to see if each of the marks are empty. And if it's not, then the board isn't full, right? So if we step here, now we will use the step over, because the get mark basically just check what mark is on the IJ position. And we can see that this failed. So we jump into this if statement, which will just return false, and then we will jump back out of this function. As you can see, right, it's very easy for me to just step through the program and see what's going on at each state of the program. So let's say that I had an error somewhere in the board is full, then I can just I can add a breakpoint into this function here, run the program until I get here, and then I can see at like line by line what's going on, and then I can find out what went wrong. So let's actually do this, because this isn't too fun right now, because now we will just print stuff and actually follow the main game loop. And yeah, actually this I can actually show, since we were asking for user input, right? Then you would have to both step through the program and supply some user input inside of the console, right? So we step here, and now we see that, oh, the debugger stopped, but it's because it's waiting for some input in the window. So now, oh yeah, x is equal to 0 as we supplied, and then if we do the next one, it's 3 or whatever. Then the next line will be 3 as well. So it's a bit messy if you want to add the user input and the debugger, but it works. And like, as we tried to teach you before, right? Usually you would not like to manually test stuff. You would like to have tests or something similar. And then you don't have to use user input as much either, right? So let's actually do that. We stop the program, and I made some beautiful tests inside of this board test class. By the way, if you have any questions or whatever, or get tired of listening to my voice, just interrupt me and ask them. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So yeah, now I basically I've had some tests for if the board is full, and some tests for if we have someone winning either horizontally, vertically. Oh, that didn't really work, but vertically or diagonally, right? And we will mess up some of these functions just to see or to showcase how the debugger makes it easy to find out what went wrong, basically. Yeah. So let's just look at the the board is full, right? So one thing about the debugger, anything that you could run in IntelliJ like normally, you can run in debug mode instead, and that goes for tests as well. So let's try to debug the board is full test. And now, as we can see, we have this call stack that's very beautiful. It looks a bit weird when you start importing stuff with tests and such, but at least the first line makes sense. So yeah, now we can see that we have the board, and if we can even look into it even further, right? So the grid was the 3x3 character array, and we can step in and see that, oh yeah, we have the empty characters on all slots. So let's see, let's continue stepping through it. And yeah, and the idea of this for loop here is to just set an X on every spot in the board. So let's just step a few steps, basically. And we can see how the board is changing each step, right? Which makes it, yeah, it's a bit tedious to go through this entire thing. So let's say you have some piece of code that you just want to skip. You can always add a breakpoint outside of it, and then go into run and debug action and resume program. And then it will run until we hit a new breakpoint, right? As we talked a little bit about before. And yeah, and we want to step into the function here, right? That we've seen before. And if there was an error somewhere in here, we would easily find it by stepping here. But as we know now, right, if we look in the grid, everything is marked. So we actually know that we will reach this point. So we continue on. That's exactly what we do. And then the board is full, as we would hope, right? And yeah, I will resume here as well. Yeah, and as we can see that this function actually works. So that's all good. But now let's mess up something and see how we could use this to our advantage, basically. So this is the function that we check if we have a horizontal winner. So like if it's yeah, in a line, right? So we do this by checking winner, which in turn has 3 helper functions. And we will mess up this one a little bit, right? So let's just say that we start from, we set the for loop to start from the first, what do you call it, line of the board instead of, or yeah, index 1. So it's the second line, right? And if we now go into the board test and then we run here, then we should get some bad results down in the left side corner. Right? Now it doesn't work anymore. So let's try to debug this function and see why it doesn't work. So yeah, what we did here, right, is just to add an X to these 3 spots. So, oh yeah, actually this is some Python inside of me coming out. This should actually be like this, right? Yeah, but let's debug this now. Here. So if we look at the variables, right? It looks like X should have 1 here, right? So if we continue on in, I'm just pressing the shortcut F7 now, by the way. So step into to dig further deeper, right? And then we have the choice which function we actually want to look closer to. And as I said, right, we was messing with horizontal winners. That will be the one that we step into. And you just pick it by the, what you call it, like the arrows on your keyboard, and then press enter on the function that you want to look at, right? So now we're here, and let's just step a bit. Actually, this will make it a bit easier. And where are all the... I will just add a variable here to make it easier to see what's going on, right? Yeah, that we change it here to small. And I will just rerun this. Yeah, so if we step into, oh wait, I stepped over. Whoops. Right, I want the horizontal one. Continue stepping. Now we can see that if you look at the board, right, we put the X's on the first row. So we would suspect that is this mar here, or mark, I can't spell apparently, or yeah, we have another mark here, that was why, whatever. We would suspect that the mark at placement 0, 0 would be an X, right? So if we step here, well, yeah, maybe step over was the best call there. Now we can see that mar is an empty space, right? And that's not really what we see here. So this tells us that, oh wait, something is wrong already. At the first iteration of the loop, we can see that the error has already occurred, right? And if we look further into it, right, we can see that I and J should both be zeros at this point, which I isn't, right? So it's quite easy to see that, oh yeah, we started at the wrong row. Excuse me. Yeah, we started at the wrong row, right? Yeah. So, and as I said, right, this was a pretty easy mistake to spot, right? But it's about the methodology. Using the debugger, we can find where the problem occurred. And sure, this was a very easy one to spot. But if you have a harder problem, then you can still see, right? Okay, I reached this line and I got something that I shouldn't have. Why? Then you can identify from that point, you have your like the program state down here. Oh, which variable is incorrect? Oh, I is incorrect, right? Then we will change, or we will look into why I is wrong. In this case, it was very easy, but maybe it won't be as easy every time. But by using like the debugger, any problem should be solvable basically, because you can see where the problem occurred, and then you can take it, like narrow down your search from there, right? So that's the basic idea. Oh yeah, I had like a note as well, right? About this. This might have been a, or actually, let's put it, let's see, is it like this? Printing stuff worked as well, right? But now we can't stop anything. So if we were to run this, we would just get, well, we will only see empty spaces on the board, right? So we won't actually print anything. oh yeah, now actually we do. We fixed it, right? So now we see that the 3x's gets printed. But if we went back here, let's see again. Yeah, and now as you can see, but we have printed. Each line will print an empty space. But this doesn't really tell us anything. Even if this, you can use like the prints and stuff to find the problem as well, because you realize that you should print 3x's, right? But you don't. But it's much harder to understand why the prints never happened, because you can't ever see like the value of I, like what the iteration is, right? If that makes sense. Yeah. I think that was the basic point I wanted to make. Like as I said, right, it isn't that hard of an area, or like the logic isn't that hard. But even when the logic gets harder, by stepping through the program step by step, you should be able to tackle even like harder problems in the future. So I will take like a 2-minute break just to refill my water. And then when I come back, I will look into the dev news project, and we'll shut this down for now. And I will show you like how you can use the debugger in this context as well, because it's not as straightforward. Like, where would you put your breakpoints in here? It's like an API. It doesn't really make sense in the same way that it would make sense in, you know, when you have your main function and stuff like that. So give me a minute. I will be back. Take your pee breaks or whatever, and see you in 2 minutes. You should have taken a break earlier. Yeah. This iteration is required. Yeah. Get it or not, you know? Yeah. It is what it is. So let's see. Hello again. I never actually started a timer. So I don't know how long I was gone, or if people had, taken their precisely 2-minute time breaks. But I think maybe, is there anyone who has any questions about what I talked about this far? We can do that now when not everyone is present, perhaps. If anyone has any question, was it hard? Was it easy?
I have a question. Maybe something you covered, but wasn't quite obvious. What is exactly like the difference between stepping into a particular? I guess you step into a breakpoint, and stepping over.
Okay. No, it's a good question, and I think like when you start, if you start using this yourself, right, you will quite quickly pick up the difference between them. So I hope I'm still sharing my screen. Looks like I do. Okay, yeah, this works as well. I tried to add a step breakpoint here, but it doesn't really matter. So the question was the difference between this button here, step over and step into, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's say I press step over now. What will happen is I will just try to jump to the next line in the what do you call it, like the same function that I am right now, like in the same scope basically. So if I press here now, step over, we have this function called here, but I will just ignore it. I will step over it. So whatever this thing returned, I will still, I will get the Boolean value out of it, but I can't actually look at what's going on like inside of this function if I press step over. If I were to run it again and try step into instead, then I will try to step into this function. So step into, and now I actually like we go deeper and deeper into functions, right? And we can see that here as well. So this was the horizontal width. It should probably be called test or something, right? But the first call was here. The next call is for the winner function. And if we step into further, let me put the rest button, yeah, inside here, like basically we step into will add on top of this stack. Like it will try to move further and further down as deep as it can into functions, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think when I actually used the debugger, I was trying to find the difference for just variables, and that was not very obvious.
Oh no, then yeah, at that point that they do the exact same thing.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. So no problem. So I'm 99% sure that everyone's pee break should be over. So if no one else has any questions about this, I will jump into the API a little bit as well. Let's see, minimize this. We'll shut down some stuff here. And let's see if I still, maybe I have to do this right. So yeah, as you've seen before, right, we have to start the database and all that that good stuff. So yeah, and now it's active. And actually, I will try to sprinkle in some additional content as well. I will try to look a little bit about try to produce some error messages and try to read them to show you how I approach, like when I get 400 lines of error message, like how I try to extract the important information out of that. So for example, let's actually just, we will shut this down for now and see what happens if we try to run the news application without starting the database, right? I'm sure that most of you have seen this before. because it's a really easy mistake to make, right? Oh, and yeah, and by the way, you have been given the dev new solution by Kobena, as far as I'm aware, right? So this shouldn't be anything new. Let's see. Well, this doesn't look like it did on my computer before. I don't like that. But yeah, sure. Let's use the gradle command in here instead. That will work as well. It's like this. So yeah. So that said, right, I wanted to look a little bit about or at some error messages, and I'm a bit let's not call it lazy, but I haven't like figured out the most perfect examples. I have taken the easy pickings as you would, like not starting the database, right? Just to showcase how I would approach this very long error message, right? So usually when I get something like this, the place that I start is at the beginning, right? The first few lines of the output, basically. So as we see here, right? All of this looks good. And oh yeah, no, Eduardo got an email. Don't mind that. So the first line that we encountered the error on is this one, right? Exception during pool initialization. This doesn't really tell us too much, right? Because we need to understand what the carry pool one is, and I have no idea, and you probably don't either. But we're starting to get some error messages in here, right? And this might make a little bit more sense. So we see that the connection to localhost 5432 is refused. And I mean, this is a bit misleading, right? I mean, yeah, I guess the connection is refused, but it's refused because we hasn't started anything, right? So this is just a matter of experience. This is the kind of message that you will see when you get refused, or when the port is active, right? But the key information that we need to extract from this is, right, we see that it's something with the Postgres SQL, and we have some connection issues, and we have some ports. The host name and port are correct, and the blah, blah, blah. You know, it actually tells us what we should do. We should check that the host name and port are correct. So, I mean, yeah, sure. I've been a victim to this as well, or victim is maybe the wrong word, because it's me being lazy and not actually properly reading error messages that I got. You know, I see this extremely long and I'm like, oh, I have no idea what to do. But actually the developers usually try to make these as readable as possible. You just need to look and know where to find them, basically. And usually, as I said, right, it's the first line. Because all of this in the middle, right, it's just like nested errors for a bunch of imported library functions. This doesn't really make any sense to anyone. It's the first line, as well as like the last few lines as well, right, where Gradle gives its like conclusion itself as well, right? I think there should be a maybe not. Maybe I'm just misremembering, right? Oh no, here we have it, right? The last error as well, right? Connection refused. It's a bit less verbose and it doesn't tell us as much. But the last error and the first error is the two that I would look at the first, or the most, right? And like once we have like gathered this fact, then I mean, at least I can try to figure out, oh, it's something about the database that's wrong. And the first thing is it on, is it off, whatever, right? But like from this, if this was now actually this is just a bit freelanced. Maybe this won't work at all. But sometimes it helps to just copy paste whatever the output of the error is. God damn. Eduardo don't have a mouse. I blame him for this. Stop laughing, man. Let's see. Can I do it again? I have his mouse is like it's a pad, but it's too short. Okay, there we go. So let's say that I were to copy paste this in here. Then we actually see that someone else has gotten some similar, problem. They can't connect, whatever. And I won't be reading all of this now, right? But the point I'm trying to make is, if you encounter an error, most likely someone else has as well. And hopefully, they have solved it in some way. And Stack Overflow is a good way to find that out, right? So right now I just copy pasted the whole thing. That's usually not the best way to go, but it might be a good place to start. Because as you see, like localhost 5432, for example, that's like specific to what we are using, right? This port will be different for other people and such, right? But by identifying the like the keywords of this message, you should be able to like Google your way forward, basically. So yeah, let's just stop that at that and continue moving on forward now with the actually running database, right? Let's see, and we try to run this again. No, it should work. Sooner or later. Oh wait, it's actually started. Never mind. I was this was the line that I was looking for. Yeah, so now it works. And as again, I'm lazy. Let's see if we can make some other easy error message pop up, like by starting or trying to connect like both via the normal terminal and via IntelliJ, and see if we can get some error message if we try to connect to the database twice, right? And again, we get some error message. Actually, the error message disappears. Or no, it doesn't. Never mind. Yeah, it doesn't look like it did on my computer. Whatever. It is what it is. Well, on my computer, it said something about the connection already being in use. Maybe I have some setting that Eduardo doesn't, but whichever the case, right? My point is still that usually the error message that we produce, that is produced, usually tries to tell you as good as it can exactly where the problem lies, and from that you need to extract the key information and then Google your way forward, right? Because someone has always encountered the same bug or problem that you have. Yes. Yeah, but that was a little bit of like extra with errors, right? Let's see if we can have some endpoints working here. So I will first just run Postman, and I don't know if you saw this, but in the repository that Kobena gave you, right? You have some Postman collection tests that you can run, and I've just imported them here. So let's see if we can run them. And what this basically is just a list of HTTP commands, right? Your gets and your posts and your put and whatever, right? It's just a list of those, just to see that this works. Yeah, I see a bunch of OKs and created and everything. So I think, yeah, we have a functioning product. Great, and we can see that we have some, select and everything that we should. But yeah, but this was running inside of the terminal, right? We don't want to do that because we want to use the debugger now. So I will turn this off. And we will exit. And we will start the then use application inside of the your iPods. They started messing with the microphone.
Ah, okay, sorry.
Okay, can you guys still hear me, by the way? Someone wave or whatever. Eduardo's, yeah, I see a thumbs up, great. Yes, okay. So just for the sake of it, let's see if the Postman is still running, or if we run it again, if we still get, the OKs and everything. And we do, so great. The program is working just as before, it's just in debug mode now. And it's kind of hard, right? Where, I mean, or not that hard, right? But it doesn't really make sense in the same way to put in breakpoints inside of API. Or at least for me, it isn't as evident that you can do it, but you actually can. So if I just put, for example, a breakpoint here, and then I will go into dev news, and let's just list all of the articles, for example, then we can see that we actually do stop the program here at this breakpoint. Even though like we don't call anything from in here, it's just, when the request from Postman appears, the debugger still recognizes, yeah, this is a line of our program that has been reached, and we have a breakpoint here, so we will stop it here. So we can actually, we can add breakpoints anywhere, as long as we can run the code in debug mode. We can add breakpoints, even if like the thing that triggers the code to be run is the HTTP or the Postman request, right? We can still stop it here. Right, and this doesn't really do much, right? Because well, we only return an empty list, I think, or maybe we don't because we ran some stuff before, right? But we can still like continue. We can step into stuff if we had some more interesting. Let's say we had some logic in here, like we wanted to rearrange them or sort them. We could step into the sorting function and see that worked out properly and everything. But now we just list everything, so it's not that interesting, right? But we can. Oh yeah. So when you, this is like a practicality lesson, I guess. Step over and step into when you're starting to import a bunch of files. I mean, probably it works as intended, but it feels like it doesn't. Because as you can see, now we're like inside of invocable handler method, which I have no idea where it's from, but somewhere inside of Spring, right? We can step through their imported functions as well, right? But that's usually kind of too deep, because when we debug, usually we assume that the imported function works as intended, and it's our code that isn't working, but we can step into it further. But once we're like inside of the imported code, it's a bit hard to get out of it. Like now you can see if I continue to press step over, I'm still inside some other, imported function. But that's where the run, debug action, resume program, because then we will just run until we hit the breakpoint again. And in our case, right, we we only had one breakpoint over here. So we let the endpoint run its course, basically. And now we can see, right, we have the list of a bunch of, if I can scroll, please. Or maybe it's just one, whatever. We got some response. That's the most important part, right? So let's see. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a bit hard to use the debugger for this, like all intents and purposes. But one thing that I have used this once or twice before is to make sure that the function actually is ran, right? So let's say that we make the very simple mistake to change articles to article, and then just restart. And once again, I will run over like 5 minutes, something. That's fine. Yeah, good. I mean, you wouldn't be the one to complain, right? Yeah, and as I said to Eduardo, right, the hour is over now, but I don't have too much more to say, but I will still run through everything that I prepared. It's like 5 more minutes, something like that, right? So yeah, now we changed the endpoint. We made a mistake. We forgot the S. So if we go back to Postman, right, if we were to call this, we would suspect at the very least, like if we were to debug this code, like why doesn't, if we run it, right, we get some method not allowed. Like, what do you mean? I have it here. I can see it with my eyes and everything. So nowhere in here is it like, oh, you haven't written the S on the endpoint. And if we check like the error message that we get from Spring, right? I mean, we get a little bit of information, right? Requested method get not supported. And yeah, sure, that helps us a little bit. But what I think helps even more is that we have a breakpoint here. And if I run this function should be called. So we should be hitting this endpoint, but we never do, right? So what I realize is that, oh, this function is never getting called, which means that somewhere like from this request, right, to this function, there is an error in like the pipeline of information, if that makes sense. Like the connection between this function and the request isn't working properly. So it's not like a logic error or whatever. The code is right, or I mean, not necessarily right, but it's not a code issue. It's a connection issue. And then I can realize like that there is only so many things that can be wrong, right? Like, is the endpoint correct, right? And as soon as we see it, we realize, oh no, it's not. We should have an S here. And if we were to rerun this now, or we don't even have to do that, right? Because we ran it before and it worked. But my point being, right, with the use of a breakpoint, we realized that this method was never called, and then we could narrow down the things that could be wrong to like the mapping being incorrect, basically. So that is one way that I could that I would like to use breakpoints, at least, to like make sure that the code, if I think that a function should be ran, I can add a breakpoint in it, and then I will see if it's actually being ran or not. I mean, sure, yeah, I could have added, you know, as I said before, right, I could add prints and everything. Well, whatever, it doesn't work properly now. But oh yeah, it should have been here, right? But as I said before, that doesn't really scale, because then you would have to go into the console and look at the output, and it's just it becomes a great mess. It's much easier to just have a breakpoint, because let's say that it's actually being run, then we will stop it here, and then we can see maybe something else is wrong, right? And we can see the state of the server and everything, which I think is very nice. Yeah, so that was one thing that I wanted to show, and then we have another easy one. So let's just have the one that functions properly first. Oh. this? Yeah, great. So this will invoke the post. So we will create an article, right? And let's just see. Could not send request. What? Oh yeah, it's because I'm not running it. Let's see, and this should be the post for the articles, right? So do we have articles and post? Should be this. So let's just remove this. Check this. Let's see, this should work now. Yes. We can see that this method was indeed invoked. And let's just, I will press the keybind for it, right? But this is just resuming the program. So we don't have to manually click the run and then here every time. And we can see that it works, right? But let's say we mess this up a little bit. Let's say we accidentally add angel brackets here instead. Now we can see that this function never was called either, right? And we see that it's a bad request. And as well, we actually get, this time the error message here is actually quite nice because we can see like, let's see. So the JSON parse error cannot deserialize. This doesn't really make that much sense, but like, then you can see that something with the topic is incorrect. Yeah, topic is bad, blah, blah, blah. And we see topic here again. So then we can realize, oh, it's the topic field, right? So in this case, reading the error message is a bit better than using the breakpoint, right? And my point with this is basically like the debugger is not the be all end all. You will still require to like read error messages and try to make sense of what this actually means, because like the debugger can help you solve a lot of things, but not everything. Just in the way that error messages can help you solve a lot of things. But then sometimes people make very bad error messages that makes no sense, and then the debugger might help you instead, right? So it's like a tool in your toolkit. Let's see, did I have something more? Yeah, I have a quick one left that we actually can do. So check out the, oh, maybe I didn't prep it on this computer actually. That's bad. Let me just see what the difference was. Okay. So I will stop this and I will introduce an error inside of the topic, I think. Yeah. So is it articles? Yeah. So I will just remove the what you call it in Java, like the initialization of the set, right? Because I mean, I still think this looks quite nice, and IntelliJ still think this is completely fine. But if we were to run this, and we won't get any error messages here either, right? Hopefully, at least. Yeah. Yeah, it looks nice, right? I think. Yeah, everything works as intended. And if we just clean this out a bit, and then we open topic, and I think the endpoint should be, let's see, which one is it? Oh yeah, this was the, yeah. So this is kind of deeply nested, so it's not like a perfect test run. But if we run this now, if we see, so as I said, right, you can open a collection and then you can run everything in sequential order, right? So let's do that again until we reach some kind of error, which we do here. So we can see it's the endpoint articles, and then the ID of the articles, and then topics, which should be in the articles controller, I would suspect. Let's see, article, no, somewhere. Let's see. Articles ID. Okay, maybe it's in the topic controller then. Yeah, I arrived, right? Articles, and then the ID, and then topics. Yeah, this one, and it's no, it's a post, so this one. So let's add a breakpoint here, just because we know that this is the place that fails. I won't press run again now, because like what all of these tests do is like add stuff to the database. And if I try to run it again, we already have stuff in the database, so these tests won't work properly anymore. So I will just restart it in debug mode again, right? Because we want the breakpoint to work. So let's see. And yeah, by the way, like running in debug mode may introduce some like slowdown, because basically what you're doing is running your program inside of another program, kind of like somewhat like Docker. Like you run your program inside of another program to be able to stop your initial program, right? And sometimes it will be a little bit slower. And sometimes it's noticeable, but usually it isn't, right? So let's, now everything is up and running again. So let's try to run all of the requests again. And now we stop it. And yeah, and once again, right, it's the articles, one, topics. And this is the one that failed before. Just take it from me, right? So the question is, what actually happens here? Which we might be able to find out by using the variables section here in the debug window. So let's just step a little bit here, right? So we can see, oh yeah, we have some kind of article, right? And then we have some topic. And we can actually see like the articles field of the topic is actually null, right? And as you remember, that's what we did here, right? We removed this line. So this is actually initialized to null and not an actual hash. So it's not an empty hash set from the get-go, right? So let's jump back here. And now we can actually see, right? If we step again, the topics get article, this will return null. So topic articles will be null, which we can see here, which makes it very easy for us to realize, oh, this line will produce a null pointer exception because we try to add something to null and not an empty set. So yeah, now with the debugger allowed us to find out what the issue is, right? And this was very easy, and we didn't even look at, before. Okay, now we won't find it again, right? But before we would have had some error messages as well, right? But now we didn't even need to. Now we just needed to step through the program, and we could, by stopping at the correct step, see like what state of the program was, and realize that, oh, it's because we're trying to add something to null, which we can't do, right? So it's quite easy for us to realize why it didn't work, basically. And just for the sake of repetition, right? If I do this again, I started to talk a little bit about the error message, right? And how I said that you should be able to do both. You should both be able to read error messages and use the debugger. So let's see if we can reproduce the debug error as well. I'm not sure if I started this in debug mode. Let's see. Because I think, if I recall correctly, the error message for this error was quite easy as well. to spot what could be would be the issue, right? But let's see. Now everything's up and running. Let's run the test again. And yeah, so let's just step through this. Oh, yeah, the resume keybind again. And yeah, now we have a long error message once again, and this doesn't tell us anything. But maybe the first line does, right? Null pointer exception. That's one of the most common ones, right? When you have it initialize something, you're trying to add something, but the topic articles is null, right? So yeah, this time the error message was quite easy as well, even if, you know, by just looking at it, like 95% of the information we get from the error message is just junk. This doesn't tell us anything. It's just the first line. So yeah, this is just to go back to the point that I was talking about before, right? You should be able to use both of these tools to debug your code. Yeah, I think that's actually it, or at least the errors that I had prepared for this. Is there anyone that has any questions or whatever before I let Eduardo show you the front end? Well, I will take that as a no then. Eduardo is moving in the background. Do you want like 5 minutes break, or do you want to go?
No, it's okay for that.
Yeah. So Eduardo is telling me that in 5 minutes he will start the front end session. You have like 5 minutes to get some snacks or take your bathroom breaks again. But I'm done for today, and I will stop sharing. And I hope you learned something. Great. And yeah, well, you can just stay in this room, by the way. He will. I'm just stealing his spot, as I said, right? Someone said something?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great. Then I will see you when I see you, and have fun with the front end session.
Yeah.
say, hey guys, I will take 1 minute if you have any questions or whatever. So, hello everybody.
Hola, hola, hombre.
So don't worry, I know that you're quite tired because it was a quite long session, but it was amazing, to be honest. This should have been done as an optional lecture during programming in depth, to be honest. But we're gonna, I want to more to focus on questions, and if there is no questions, I also would like to go to a couple of small tricks in the console log, nothing as in depth as in IntelliJ. You may wonder why front-end developers don't use debuggers as much as back-end developers, and the answer is quite simple and quite surprising. It's because we are the only discipline, the front-end development, that actually has the console built into our applications, even in production. So that's why we use console logs. So it's super weird that everything that Felix was teaching, and by the way, I was listening the whole 2 hours, hour and a half. It's amazing all about breakpoints, but trust me, in front-end developer, we don't use that because we have the console right in our web page, and because we are from graphical user interface creators, we need to actually interact with the button, something that we cannot simulate using a terminal. So that's why we use the console log, and that's the thing that we're going to explain today. And after that, I will give a couple of tips. So front-end developers, the front-end developers in the teams in the Scrum project can start mocking up data, because something important, you don't need to wait until the database is done so you can do your part. Good teams can split the workload between back-end developers, front-end developers, and the front-end developers can work on data until while the back-end developers are creating that. So let's do that. Let me start sharing the screen. By the way, if you have any questions, or if you have any specific question about the front end bugs that you encountered during the backend, this is the perfect time, because that will be most of the things that we're gonna cover anyways. So for example, let me open which project is this one? This is the React box, and this one is this is a unit testing one. So, okay, let me run this project. Just give me 1 second. Let's wait until npm is starting. It says utilizing. There you go. Now I can do npm start. ls npm start. So I will hide this one here. Perfect. So, okay, we have the application running, and let's do something. Start from the basics. Just as this is the code base that I showed during an optional lecture. So in case that this is the first time that you see it, this is the resolve case of the Instabox project. You have this particular Git repository in the front end module. And the thing is that I want to do a console log, the normal console log that you know. So console log, for example, JSON, and you will see it right away. So just open it here and clear filters, and then you can see our array of objects. And this is something that you will basically be debugging all the time. It's not something that you need to do a breakpoint, because a breakpoint, as Philip explained, stop the application until you do the next step, and you can take a chance to read what is happening. Sometimes, as a front-end developer, what you need to do is to actually read what information was received from the server. You know that unfortunately React cannot showcase an object on the screen. In fact, if I try to do that, something like this on switch loaded. So yeah, at this particular point in time, I already have the data loaded in this particular screen. So we know that the data exists in this particular part of the screen, but you know that React unfortunately cannot allow me to do that. So if I do this,
the application is probably gonna crash, or React is trying to send some error message. No, it's because I am the route. I need to be in order detail in order to crash this. Let me go to the next page. Yeah, this one. Here we have the selected order. This is an object, and this is the entire object. We cannot just put an object here. This in theory will crash React, or basically you don't see it. It actually crashes. I don't know what is not crashing it right now, but this, as you can see, you cannot see the object rendered at all in the object page. In fact, if I enter the object page, now it's crashing. Perfect. So we know that we cannot take the data, read the data, but you can use it in the console log. But if the information that you have comes from a standardized database, there is a nice trick. I think it's console table. Just give me 1 second. Console table. And if you put the same information, let's go back to this one, and we can debug this one as I think that I debugged this one during the optional lecture, but we can debug it again. No worries. And perfect. It looks weird, but let me see what is happening. By using console log, you will see your array, and the array contains the objects. But if you have an object, and by the way, you can click here to pop up the console log and put it in the full screen. Now you can see very clearly. If you do console.table and your array of objects has the same structure, you can see your information in a nice table. So in this way, I can clearly observe everything that is being received. Even if it doesn't is related to an error, this is something that you will need to do all the time when you're working in your project, and your backend developers are giving you a new API, and you need to test it out. You know that you cannot put the data directly to React, because React will not showcase anything on the screen. It will even crash. But if you want to just learn or discover how this API works, this console.table will help you a lot. And there is a lot of you can do with the console. For example, if you do, for example, console log, let me see this trick, console log, and I think it's console again. I'm literally passing this element here in line 32 as an element inside this function. So I'm doing something super meta. I'm console logging the console itself. You will see what is going to happen. Let me delete these ones. Reload the page, and now you can see all the properties that the functions that console log has. For example, this one is the table that we just did. This is for warnings and so on and so forth. So you can basically start learning about the functionality of the console log. This one is quite nice. Console count. I think during the front end development, in some parts of the code, I was making a console log, for example, console log like console log 1, and then I was pouring another one here, number 2. If you just do console count, let me do that, console count, and we can say that, for example, tracing the AP code. We don't need to manually put numbers. This will start making the auto increment and so on and so forth. And let's test it out. Let me reload the page. And then you can see automatically the number is increasing. So when you need to do something, for example, let's keep track of this. This is in theory, this is global. So I can go here, and from the switch, I can enter the switch loaded and say that the next part of the code that will run is probably, as soon as it's here. You cannot do console logs inside the return function, but you can put it here. And let's see if the numbers keep running. And in this one, we're gonna open the home page, and in the home page, we're gonna, as soon as the cursor arrays are created, we're gonna do another console log, and let's see if the numbers runs correctly. Shall we? Let me reload the page, and you can see how we keep track of the elements. And on the right, let me just make this window smaller. On the right, we can see which ones are calling the console log. So for example, this one is calling on the app, then we're going to switch loaded, and then on the home. And because remember, why you can see duplicates, why you see 6 calls instead of 3, app, the switcher, and the home, is because the logs run before the data is loaded, and when the data is loaded, we refresh the elements. Remember the lecture about the state. So let me do the console log again. Console log console here, so I can see the information. Just there was another one that I wanted to showcase today. Console log console. Let me reload. Let me open the inspect element. Let me put it back here. Perfect. And let me do the console. And I can see the bug count. I did a count. Error for some errors. Console log is the normal. Record the time. Okay. If you put 2 console times next to each other, you will keep track of the time to run between functions. I don't want to do it right now because I don't want to focus your group project into timing functions. Don't focus on performance at this stage. Remember that the goal of the group project is not to showcase a finalized product. The goal of the group project is that you showcase a prototype. Remember, imagine that you are showcasing something to your investors, and then at this particular point, optimizing for performance is not crucial. It's not crucial. It doesn't say. I don't say that this is not important, but for a MV, for a showcase, a prototype, it's not a priority. So I will skip over this one, but you can research on your own. The console time maybe something important. If remember when you were learning about big O notation during programming in depth, if you want to do something similar in JavaScript, console log time, putting one at the beginning and one at the end will actually keep track of the time. The whole performance are your functions. Well, let me show a nice trick in case that multiple people are working together in the console in the front end, and you need to know which ones which logs are from myself and which are from other developers. A nice tip will be, as soon as you finish debugging your stuff, delete your logs. But if for some reason you need to keep your logs because you need to communicate something with somebody else, you can actually start adding some style to the console logs. Let me showcase how. If I do console.log and I do, for example, I think it's C percentage sign, and I say, for example, hello world, world. And then here I do a background color. I think it's like this, background color, black, and then color orange. In theory, this will work as a CSS. Let me just test it out. Reload. Hello world. No, it didn't work. I think it's maybe as a single call. If not, let me just do a simple Google console log CSS. Yes. So we can see how to do this console log. So it's console log is this one, this parameter, and then the color, but the message. I saw how to do it in one line. Just let me see another resource, maybe in DoubleTree Schools. Maybe this one. Just give me 1 second. Console clear. This is for cleaning the debug. I will send this article. There is one for the CSS. Let me see. CSS. Styling, color red. So for example, let me try this one. Perfect. So yeah, you can embed CSS styling into the console log. So this will be useful if somebody needs to send a message and don't want to remove this message from somebody else, but you need to highlight that. For example, let's say that in Nicolas' group, Nicolas goes with the color green and Sujan was with the purple. So if for some reason you need to do console logs in a piece of code that somebody else has that also have console logs, and you don't want to delete their console logs because you don't want to mess with somebody else's code, you can start assigning colors to each other to say, oh, this messages belong to me, and this message belongs to somebody else. That being said, I will strongly recommend that as soon as you finish debugging something, you clean your code. So I will actually comply with my own rule and start deleting my console logs here, and we'll keep looking for the entire trace. I know that this one is being modified, so I will delete this one. And I know that I also modified it here, so I will delete it from this one. There we go. And finally, there is another console log. No, you can actually search for console logs here. It will be a good practice to start checking that you don't have console logs anywhere else, because keep your console log clean. So when you actually have a bug, you don't have a lot of legacy console logs that you don't know if they're active or not. So clean your stuff after you are done. Now, any questions about this particular part? Yes? No? Take your time. I will put the link here in Zoom, by the way, so you can see more. Now, I would like to focus on something else. Give me 1 second, I have my notes around here. Let me see which ones are the notes for. Oh, I have it here. So this is more for the design, user flow. Okay, yeah. The next thing that I was looking for explaining is that I remember that people were having problems with the backend. If you have any particular question, it will be the perfect time. If not, I will say something important. If you're working in the group project and you decide that your team will be split, half of the people as a front-end developer and half as a back-end developers, the most important thing so you can work in the same time is that before each group goes to code their own part of the code, the front-end developers of in React and the backends in Sprint is decide a common schema. So in this one, I will share screen once again. So for example, if you decide that your social network is, let's say, I will use a pre-uninspired example. Let's say that it's a social network like a Goodreads for TV series. I'm so sorry for the person that actually came up with that idea. I'm making it as a joke, by the way. But let's say that you come up with that idea. Instead of the backend developers going to code directly, and then the backend developers cannot do anything until the backend people come out with the API, the best approach is that both the front-end developer and the backend developer stick together and design this particular element. Let me open the Instabox example. So, oh, this computer is super slow. There you go. So remember the JSON schema that we mentioned in the optional lecture about the React box. Now I will explain it for everybody. You know that as the example that I did in the console log table. Remember the example that I did with the table. I think I don't need to go back. Yeah, you can see an example of this. Remember that the one that we just did, the console table. Remember that console table comes from an array, and the array has objects, and the objects has basically properties. These properties are columns in an analogy of a backend MySQL table. So before everybody start to work in their before the backend developers start working on their part, and the frontend developer cannot do anything until the API is ready, you should stick together and define this table. And this table, as you can see, is, let me just transpose it. Just give me 1 second. It's called transpose. I just switch the order of the keys. I switch the order of the table, so you can just focus on these ones. So you can decide together using a spreadsheet software like Google Spreadsheets and say, okay, the table users, for example, will have an ID, it will have a status, it will have an estimated time, it will have an ID for the package, it will have an ID for the store, and so on and so forth. If the front-end team and the back-end team can mock up a table like this on their own. And let me just create a table from scratch so we can use a cleaner table. So imagine that we are sitting together as a front-end developers and back-end developers, and we're going to create a table for this social network about like Goodreads about a TV series. And we're going to store the table for the user, let's say the user table. We together, the front end and the back end, we create, we need an ID, we need the name. We don't need to write a username because we are talking about the user table, so we go direct with the name. We can say, for example, a series, and this will be an array. Then movies, this will be an array as well. And then we're gonna have, for example, a profile picture, profile picture URL. And then we're gonna have another property and so on and so forth. And let's say, for example, we'll create 3 fake examples. Name, Eduardo, Felix, Caroli. And then in an array, I can say, for example, TV series, I don't know, Dr. House, Simpsons until season 10 before it went downhill, and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Movies, The Arrival, blah, 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 Shin Godzilla. Yeah, of course, you're gonna do a Godzilla meme. Sorry, Suyan, you need to support me. You need to tolerate me a couple of days more. And then the URL could be, depending on your local host, blah, 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 HTTP, image.png, and so on and so forth, and something similar. Then the backend developers can go to work on this system and create the APIs, whatever amount of time they need. The front-end people don't need to wait with the arms crossed until it's done. You know that you can mock up data. We showcase this example here in the optional lecture. In this case, you can create a new JSON, and you will see that, for example, this is my user for TV and series social network.json. This is the worst name I ever come up, and I'm not making joke about the person that made this the suggestion of the topic. I'm saying about the JSON name in particular. Let's say just user mockup. There you go, much better name. And then you can go to this table and then create a fake data and start making like this. This is the name, the property name. It's called Eduardo. Then a series is an array, so I can start mocking my data just like this. Dr. House, Simpsons, the Simpsons, and so on, blah, blah, blah. And then the same with the other elements, and then just copy this. Oh, I forgot the most important key, ID. ID 1, 2, 3. So you can start mocking this data. I remember that Nicolas corrected me in the last lecture. Oh yeah, I was mixing the correct IDs. So this will be Felix. This will be Caroli. I don't know about series text from Caroli, but I know that Felix do American Dad, Family Guy, South Park, etc., etc., etc. So okay, you have this mock-up data. So that means that as soon as the front end and the back end people agree on this table, front end people can jump into the code and start working with this data right away. So, and how do you import it? It's quite simple. You go to the app. And here I will explain something. I know that for the people that assisted to the optional lecture, this will be the same information, I know. But in any case, you can toggle, you can create a Boolean that says if we're in the bug, we're gonna use the fake JSON. And if we are not in the, let me delete everything. And if we are not in the bug, we're gonna modify a little bit from the optional. So people that assisted the optional lecture can see something new. So, okay, instead of importing backup orders, I will import this user mockup that I just created. So I will say import user mockup from /data user mockup. Perfect. And I will create a debug mode, debug mode, and this will be a boolean sorry, false equals false. And the thing is inside in the use effect, we're gonna say if debug mode equals true, so that means that we're using the fake data, then we go directly to set data, use mockup. Else, we run a function called fetch data. And then fetch data can be a function of here, function fetch data, and you can fetch the data here, and so on and so forth. So that's a nice trick. So you can start working right away, because I remember people saying that they having problems with that. And well, I will take a couple of questions because we're gonna wrap it up in less than 15 minutes. So any questions right now? Anything?
No.
And I just realized something. I think Felix also has a problem with this. I just realized that I didn't set up my speaker, so now I can hear you. Somebody, if somebody actually said something in the last 15 minutes, sorry, please go again, because I didn't have a speaker enabled. So, any questions at this particular stage?
No, thank you.
Perfect. Then I see a new message. Just give me 1 second. No, perfect. Then I see that basically Felix's session was super complete, to the point that we overlap a little bit of topics, and that's okay. I really like his approach. It was really nice. So yes, you will have this video by tonight. I will upload it myself. If you have any questions, yeah, you can ask me anything directly via the messages. Well, I hope that the session was quite good. To be honest, I did hear the session from Felix. I was here on the room all the time. It was quite amazing. So that's why I made my part quite short. So, okay, I really hope that you are having an idea of your topics to choose. Go crazy with the ideas. No idea is bad. To be honest, there is no bad ideas. It's just focus on proposing ideas that you, as soon as you propose something, think about how to code it. So as soon as you propose something, just have a big notion of how to do it as well. So people don't fall in love with an idea, and then 3 days later you realize that you will not be able to complete even a small sample in 4 days. So that will be my tip. And there you go. Oh yeah, of course, I will be stalking all groups. You're lucky that you're not in the group that I actually being assigned as a mentor, because in that one I will be all the time checking the messages every 5 minutes. So, okay, that will be it for, oh yeah, you know. So that
We know that.
You know that, yeah.
So what, you don't check messages of other groups?
I will do it, but I will check one particular group more, because I am
Okay.
as a mentor over there. So, so yeah, that will be pretty much it. And well, good luck with your topic assignments. You need to send the topics by tomorrow to the name of the group by tomorrow to Caroli, and good luck with that. So see you around.
Thanks, Eduardo.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.